In this section, we're going to cover animation in Flutter. Animation in Flutter is both equal parts awesome and frustrating, and you'll see why. First thing we need to do here is let's actually import the animation package. Then we need to use a mixin down in our state. So let's go down to our state and let's say with single ticker provider state mixin with longest name in the history of names. So what have we really done so far? Well, not a whole lot, but we're using all the backend code. And this is the beauty of Flutter, and this is why I love Flutter packages. I should say Dart packages. All that code, very simple, very easy to reuse. We just add a few lines and bang, we're done. So we want to make an animation. Notice how that is a typed class. So we're going to say double, and let's call this animation. Now we need an animation controller. And let's call this controller. Before we go any further, I want to really explain what these two things are, because you're probably looking at them going, okay, it's great that we have them, but I have no idea what they do. Animations typically have a sequence of numbers or a list of numbers that you're going to modify over time. The animation itself is that sequence of numbers, or I should say the individual number that changes over time. The animation controller is the time at which that sequence is changed. Sounds a little confusing, and it kind of is. Under the hood, that's not exactly what's happening, but it's pretty close. So we're going to init state. There we go. And just say super init state controller equal new, and we want a new animation controller. Now in here, vsync, we want to say this, meaning this current widget, and we need to give it a duration. Now we've got our duration and say milliseconds. Notice how you can also do microseconds and minutes. I usually stick with milliseconds because you're just going to drain that battery if you do microseconds. And to be honest, some animations just aren't going to keep up. So we'll do milliseconds, and let's just do this over 5,000, which is actually 5 seconds. So if you don't know what a millisecond is, every 1,000 milliseconds is 1 actual second. So there's our controller. What we're really saying is the controller is going to last, or I should say the sequence of numbers is going to change over 5 seconds, and what we're going to be drawing on is this current object. That's not exactly accurate, but you kind of get the point. Now we need to make our animation. So we're going to say animation equal, and we want a new tween. Tween is an interesting class. Tween actually is shorthand for in between. So we want a beginning and an ending. So begin, we want to do 0.0, and end, we want, let's say, 400.0. So the animation itself is between or tweened those two numbers. Now we want to animate, and we have to give it a controller. Now we should really add a listener. We've got a listener in here, and let's just grab this. And I'm just going to comment this. We're not really going to use this code. I just wanted to show you that you can do it. You can actually set the state of other things based on when the animation state changes. That way, if you wanted to know, hey, at number 255, do something special, like make an explosion or something, that is how you would actually do that. You just simply add a listener to your animation and then track its current state. All right, so we've got those two things in there. What we want to do next is actually override dispose. And let's dispose our controller. If we don't dispose that controller, what might possibly happen is we close our application and the animation's controller is still running in the background, sucking up the battery, and it appears as if your application is hung up. And of course you get some pretty bad scores. Let's jump back up here. We want to actually start that animation, so we're going to say forward. Now we need to actually add in something to animate. Let's grab our container. We're going to leave the padding, but we've got all this child stuff in here. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. So we've got a center, and where's this column at? Right here. Let's get rid of this. And we'll say new, and we want to add a Flutter logo with a size of 300. Now our container, we're going to have to do a little bit of work here. We're going to have to say height equals, and we want the animation dot value. And let's do width equals the animation dot value. Let's go ahead and flip over to our emulator, and it's not even running. Let's run this bad boy. May take a second to build this. So while it's building, what's really going to happen when we init state is we're making our controller, which is going to determine the sequence of numbers. And then we're making our tween. And you can see the animation starting up there. The tween is from 0 to 400. Let's restart this whole thing so we can see that animation again. Flip over real quick. You see how it grows and it keeps going. Now it hits the edges and it appears to just move down because it can't move any further. That's the width and height. We can change that around. Let's actually do this by like 200. Cut that in half. And you can see the animation itself is fundamentally changed.